Good day, everyone. We are Group 5 and we will be discussing about our teaching philosophy through the humanistic theory of Maslow. To start with, I will be discussing first the humanistic theory, and as we can see on the slide, the hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs is comprised of hierarchical levels within a pyramid. There are needs to be met for a person to reach his full potentials and for him to self-actualize. These needs are physiological needs such as food, water, and warmth, safety needs such as security and safety, love and belonging such as friendship and family, esteem needs such as respect and recognition for a person to self-actualize. The humanistic approach to teaching aims to meet the needs of the learners, for them to learn more effectively and develop their full potential, thus eventually can reach self-actualization. If these needs are met through the guidance and support of the family, educators, and friends, the learner will be able to reach his potentials and self-actualize. In addition, learners also need to be motivated by the said group of people. Self-actualization is part of human life and it is vital for a person to bring out the best in himself and manifest his potentials. The premise of humanistic theory is that people achieve their full potential by moving from basic needs to self-actualization. The theory stresses that human beings are inherently good and that basic needs are vital to human behaviors. Humanism focuses on each individual's potential and emphasizes the importance of growth and self-actualization. Individuals have an innate tendency to move toward growth, to increase integration of self, and to resolve psychological inconsistencies.
Origin and history of humanistic theory. Humanistic theory arose in early 1960 as a response to psychoanalysis and behaviorism. In 1962, Maslow published a book entitled Towards a Psychology of Being, in which he describes humanistic psychology as the third force, primarily in response to first and second force, which are the psychoanalysis and the behaviorism. The early development of humanistic psychology was heavily influenced by a few theorists, especially Abraham Maslow and other prominent humanistic thinkers. Since this presentation is focused on Abraham Maslow's humanistic theory, here is a brief history about him. He was considered as the father of humanistic psychology and American psychologist who was best known for creating the hierarchy of needs or a theory of self-actualization.
Let's now talk about the importance of humanistic theory to learning. The idea of student-centered learning is an example of the humanistic learning theory in action. These approaches can be vital in helping students truly learn and succeed in their education. So, how does this approach really contribute to learning and or to the learners itself? Number one, it aims to fulfill or help on meeting the needs of an individual or the learners. No, let's say the basic needs. But how it impacts on the learning nga ba? It is believed that if the needs are fulfilled, more likely the individual or the learners can focus on their learning. Or let's say they can focus more on acquiring skills themselves, right? The next one is having self-directed learning process. This one is one of the first thoughts that comes in our mind when we hear humanistic approach, right? So, how this influence learning? Here, on the second factor, learners discover their field of interest. That's why they are more engaged, lively, and enthusiastic to learn. That's because they are in control and they can set their goals freely. Basically, they learn in their own pace and field of interest. Third principle of humanistic approach that is significant in learning process was having self-evaluation. No? Students encouraged to evaluate themselves. Self-evaluation is, in the sense, where it's pictures on where and what are their strengths and weaknesses. This enables students or the learners to have an awareness that guide them to learn more effectively and enhance their skills even more. Lastly, curriculum and educators promote safe environment. For what? Now, this makes students to freely explore and express their ideas, therefore helping them to discover more and learn more together with their peers in a safe and non-judgmental environment, which is one of the most significant factors that need to be considered in a learning environment, because students are said to be learn in best in a non-threatening environment. Now, learning is viewed as a personal act to fulfill one's potential. They center on the learner as an individual and consider that learning is not just about the intellect, but also about educating the whole person, taking into account the person's interests, goals, and enthusiasm so that full potentials can be achieved. So the point is, basically, this approach, the humanistic approach, gives importance to the learning process itself and of course to the learner's needs, interest, motivation, and individuality. It also provides an understanding to view the person as an active agent. And of course, as a human person with their own driving forces and motivations, that leads them to reach their full potentials and be able to self-actualize.
Good afternoon. I will be discussing the importance of humanistic theory to teaching. There are many theories in education that have been drawn from psychology. Some of these have to do with the teaching and others with the learning. So humanism is one of the theories that have been used in both teaching and learning. As what Laika discussed earlier about learning, I will be discussing about the importance of humanistic theory in teaching. Humanism is a belief that the individuals control their own destinies through the application of their intelligence and learning. Most educators who advocate humanistic education typically intend this approach to mean one or more of these three things. First, humanistic theory or humanistic education teaches a wide variety of skills which are needed to function in today's world or in our everyday life. So these basic skills such as reading, writing, and computation, as well as in communicating, thinking, decision-making, problem-solving, and knowing oneself will help us these skills will help us in our everyday life to function as a person. So second is that humanistic education is a humane approach to education. When we say humane, it is to be compassionate. So it is important because it helps students believe in themselves and their potential. That encourages compassion and understanding that fosters self-respect and respect for others. Third is that humanistic theory or humanistic education deals with basic human concerns, with the issues throughout history and today that are concerned to human beings trying to improve the quality of life. It is important to pursue knowledge, to grow, to love, to find meaning for one's existence. So next is the importance of humanistic theory to creating teaching strategies. Teaching strategies are methods and techniques that a teacher will use to support their pupils and students through the learning process. So since the focus of humanistic approach is achieving self-actualization of an individual, by the use of humanistic approach and creating teaching strategy, they will be able to meet the needs of the learners for them to learn more effectively and develop their full potential, and thus eventually can reach their self-actualization. So these needs are the physiological, safety, love, and belongingness, and STEAM needs. So having the needs met together with safe learning environment, interest-driven learning, active engagement, and self-evaluation strategy, it gives students the motivation to encouragement to explore and reach their full potential and become a fully functioning individual. That's all. Thank you.
Humanistic theory states that the student is the authority on how they learn, and that all of their needs should be met in order for them to learn. This theory aims to help students or clients reach what Rogers and Maslow referred to as self-actualization, where the final level of psychological development that can be achieved when all basic and mental needs is essentially fulfilled. Maslow's theory has been used across the discipline to education, in human behavior, in business, and psychology, and more. However, despite of widespread use, there has been a criticism. The criticism that had been raised about this theory are: number one is human behavior is not universal. One of the major flaws of Maslow's motivation model is that it assumes human behavior is universal, even though there is an almost universal trend where basic human instincts are concerned. Not all individuals think the same. For example, with some individuals, social affection, respect, and social status are more important than safety needs. There have also been instances where some individuals have been known to put religious values and some even altruistic ones before physiological needs. Number two, it does not take into account cultural differences. Another major weaknesses of Maslow's hierarchy of needs is that it was designed based on a clinical observation of the Western world. The problem with this conceptualization is that the American culture is very individualistic. For this reason, different cultures such as African and Indian ways of life, which are more communal, have not been taken into account. For example, in India, familial connections are very important, and before an individual meets their needs, they have to think about their families. Number 3. All needs need a social connection to be fulfilled. In Maslow's theory, physiological and safety needs are the most basic, and which must be met before an individual moves onto the social requirements. However, this model is flawed, especially in the modern society. In order to meet most of these needs, an individual first requires to establish social connections. For example, building shelter and obtaining food and clothing. In order to fulfill these necessities, you require the collaboration of the other individuals. This was the case even in ancient civilization, when human beings survived on hunting and gathering. Collaboration and teamwork was still a vital resource of survival even then. Number 4. Most needs, once met, do not go away. Another flaw of Maslow's theory is in assuming that all human needs are hierarchical and that once met, they will go away. This is not the case. Most human needs are pluralistic in nature and can exist across different levels simultaneously. For example, you still need to meet basic needs such as food, shelter, and clothing even after meeting higher level of needs. And number 5, it is hard to measure the satisfaction derived from the meeting needs. The Maslow's theory is based on the simple assumption that once an individual derives satisfaction from meeting a lower level need, they will move on to the higher level needs. This feeling of satisfaction is based on the human mind and is thus very hard to measure and or predict. Aside from that, while some people might be satisfied from meeting a certain needs, others will derive no satisfaction at all, even after meeting all levels of needs.
Good day everyone, I am Trisha Raffles and let's talk about the application of humanism theory to learning. Humanistic approach believes in teaching the students to reach their full potential and self-actualize. Educators believe that both feelings and knowledge are important to the learning process. Unlike traditional educators, humanistic teachers do not separate the cognitive and affective domains. The goal of education should be to foster students' desire to learn and teach them how to learn. Students should be self-motivated in their studies and desire to learn on their own. So here it is, how do we apply humanistic theory on learning of the students? A learner becomes unhealthy when he is not in good condition, physically, emotionally, and mentally. What makes a learner unhealthy is when he did not meet his needs and is not able to reach his full potentials and self-actualize. When a learner is not able to eat breakfast and have no access to nutritious snacks and water bottle in the classroom, he becomes physically unhealthy. A learner who feels that he is not secured and safe at school because of bullying could also affect. When a learner doesn't feel the love and support of his family and friends, it would affect his relationship with them. The learner may experience loneliness and it could affect his emotions and mental health. If there is no praises, affirmations, and compliments from family, educators, and friends, the learner may feel upset and it would affect his mental health. In the classroom, in order to make the learners be in good condition physically, emotionally, and mentally, the educators should assist the learners by doing a food program in the morning so the learners could eat their breakfast and not skip it. Having breakfast program for the students help to prevent issues like low energy levels, fatigue, and inability in completing tasks. The educator should also let the students have the access with their bottles in the classroom to keep them hydrated and provide nutritious snacks that have complex carbohydrates to maintain their energy levels. The educator should also allow sleep-deprived students to take a short nap in another room. They should also be deliberate in developing a classroom culture of trust and safety to assist learners in meeting their safety needs. By setting a bullying-free environment, educating the learners about it, every learner would feel that they are secure. The educators could also assist the learners by strategically placing students into groups that makes them feel better through creating group activities that would result to building good relationships. And if we meet all of these, we can finally assist the learners reach their full potential by helping them achieve their self-esteem needs by continuously to affirm their peers with specific compliments. When these needs are met, learners will be able to nurture their skills, reach their full potentials, and self-actualize.
The application of humanistic theory to teaching. The application of humanistic approach in education is to stress the importance of meeting the needs of students so they can learn more effectively and develop their full potential. Providing a child with meals makes them less likely to get distracted. Giving them a sense of security provides emotional support. Affirmations and compliments give learners motivation, a feeling of belongingness, and at the same time enhances their self-esteem, all of which ultimately leads to self-actualization. Humanistic education have long recognized that children who are physically, emotionally, and mentally healthy are more capable of self-fulfillment. In teaching, educators facilitates and guides the learners to discover the goals they want to achieve and encourage them to thrive by supporting them needs. Only by then self-actualization could be attained. Goals they want to achieve. Next is the application of humanistic theory to teaching strategies. Student choice. Choice is central to the humanistic learning theory and humanistic psychology. Humanistic learning is student-centered, so students are encouraged to take control over their education. This strategy allows the students to pursue their subject of interest. It is crucial for students to find motivation and engagement in their learning, and that is more likely to happen when students are choosing to learn about something that they really want to know. This is fostering engagement to inspire students to become self-motivated to learn. The effectiveness of this approach is based on learners feeling engaged and self-motivation in learning. So humanistic learning relies on educators working to engage students rather than actually teaching. Their role is to encourage them to find things they are passionate about so they can be excited about learning. Lastly, self-evaluation. For most humanistic teachers, grades don't really matter. Self-evaluation strategy is the most meaningful way to evaluate how learning is going. Grading students encourages them to work for the grade instead of doing things based on their own satisfaction and excitement of learning. Routine testing and route memorization don't lead to meaningful learning in this theory, and thus aren't encouraged by humanistic teachers. Humanistic educators help students perform their self-evaluations so they can see how students feel about their own progress.